when I think about what my child needs when they are dysregulated, the more that I can be regulated, the more I'm going to draw them to regulation.
Hi, welcome back to Family Care Learning Podcast, Spooky Time Edition. Again, another disclaimer, totally not spooky. But with Halloween being around the corner, I thought it would be a fun way to kind of leverage some of these important topics of, bringing a little Halloween theme, a little fun, a little lightheartedness. I mean, we are working with kids, so it's okay to laugh a little bit, but nothing scarier than nothing scarier than
what
out
we
of
talk
normal.
about anyways,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So, Brandon, I roped you back into joining me in this. You're one of our regional clinical directors, if I understand your job title correctly. Great. So, Brandon, Halloween candy, do you like it? What's your favorite? What's the deal with the Halloween candy?
So I love me a good Kit Kat. That's one of my favorite. One of the things that I love about being a dad is dad tax that I implement and I actually raise during the month of October. So for those of you out there, make sure you're using the dad tax and the mom tax with the kids' Halloween candy.
Yeah, auntie, uncle. Sometimes it's just driver's license. Like, why do you get to have ice? Because I have a driver's license. I pay taxes. Whatever it is. Yeah.
What about you? What kind of candy for you?
So I like, my grandfather and I have this similar taste in candy. So if it could have been issued to him in like World War II, I would probably be a fan of it. Favorite Halloween candy corn. I know
candy corn.
That is, for some of you, that's probably the grossest and the scariest thing that we're going to talk about on Spooky Time Podcast. But I love candy corn. I'm not a big fan of the pumpkins. I think it needs to be in triangular shape. Otherwise it becomes too much. My kids have trained me to just take whatever they don't like. So that is also my mode of like, they'll be like, hey, do you want a candy? Like, great. And I'm like, which one don't you want? Because I'd rather get to the one they don't want while it's a little fresh than like rummaging around the bag in March going, oh, look at this. It's a different color than when it started. But yeah, candy corn. Candy corn.
Man, I always think like I'm eating candles when I'm like, I think of like a birthday candle kind of style, but
I've heard people like it tastes like motor oil.
Ooh.
Or I was like, I think someone might be trying to poison you. But other than that, candy corn. It's my favorite. All right. So Brandon, today we're going to talk about what do we do when things get scary? How do we regain perspective when everything feels upside down? Inevitably, in any scary or thriller or suspenseful kind of movie, there's a moment where chaos breaks loose, right? And inevitably, the character makes the worst decision. So there's a commercial that I saw during a football game recently that was like a group of, attractive college students are like running around this abandoned farm, and they're like, oh, what do we do, guys? And one of the person goes like, hey, should we jump into this like car that's running
ready to go?
Like the shed full of chainsaws? And of course they choose the chainsaws. And I don't remember what they're selling or what it was, but I thought that was a great example of sometimes how I parent, right? Like in the heat of the moment, things are tense, I'm a little frustrated, or there's other factors that like I'm just not the most regulated, I will choose to run into the basement versus the running car. And so, I think a lot of times, or it's important, and I know we talk about it a lot, but the idea of self-regulation, how do we stay grounded in tense moments? So what is self-regulation?
Yeah. So when I think of that, the first thought that comes to my mind is it's going to be okay, right? Like it's this belief, right? Because it doesn't mean it's okay right now, but it's gonna be. We're gonna get there, right? Like it's gonna be different. What I'm going through right now is not what it's always going to be. And so I think about like there's a belief part of regulation, but then there's also like, is my body acting accordingly to what I'm believing, right? And so I think, yeah, I totally get. First of all, you're in good company, right? Like with like the bad decisions made. It's so incredible how one person in their lower brain, it literally is like the basement of their lower brain, like the fight, flight, or freeze, can cause other people to go there, right? Even a child causing an adult to do that. I've seen it so many times. I've been there so many times because of that. And you're just like, wow, this is so easy to get me dysregulated. And so, yeah, self-regulation really is the ability to go, okay, it's stressful around me. Can I keep myself in a place of regulation, or at least so I'm able to kind of keep in my upper brain is kind of how I think about it.
Great. Cool. Yeah. And I think like, well, I mean, you just mentioned some of it, but why is it so important for us to parent from a regulated place?
Yeah. When I think about what my child needs when they are dysregulated, the more that I can be regulated, the more I'm going to draw them to regulation. So in our previous podcast, we were talking about like how powerful it is for a child to feel seen, heard, and understood. Well, when you really understand there's a lot of your prefrontal cortex, this top part of your brain that's going, I see you, I'm attuned to you, I'm meeting you right where you're at. You have to be kind of in your upper brain to be able to do that. The other part of it is like the whole logic thing of I shouldn't yell at my kid or do something that is like dysregulating because it's going to cause harm to my child or the attachment relationship or worse. And so I think it, like you're saying, it's like that lower brain, dumb choice looking back at it, right? And so a lot of times, I don't know, for all of you out there where you're like, why in the world did I make that choice, right? Like when you look back and you're like, I'm so dumb. No, you're just in your lower brain. And so I think, but the best way for us to pull kids out of that is to be there ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that old like youth group model. You can only take them as far as you've gone kind of approach of like, I can only get this kid regulated when I'm regulated myself. And that is incredibly difficult sometimes. Like, and we joked earlier of like, the dad tax because I have the credit cards or I have the car keys or I have and one of the early trainings we did when we were being licensed for foster care, our agency, I think it was them. We got the opportunity to watch Brian Post's video, and he kept saying, and the whole thing was about how not to engage in these power struggles. And he kept saying over and over again, he was like, remember, you have the car keys. You're the reason the lights are on.
Yeah.
You have the credit cards.
That's so good.
Like it was that sense of perspective of this is okay. This kid's reaction to maybe it's the word no, or maybe it's the words not right now, or maybe it's, which can be incredibly triggering, even just something as simple as that. This is going to be okay.
Yeah.
This is not a threat to you. Someone didn't release a man-eating tiger into your house.
Right.
It is okay. And and I think that as a parent, that is one of the most difficult things, right? And I know you talk a lot about like your window of tolerance, right? And so like this is not going to be helpful in a audio format, but if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see.
There you go. Yeah.
But so you hold up your fingers in like a little box.
Yeah.
And that's your window of tolerance. And then you have a stressful day at work. So maybe your window just shrinks just a little bit. Your fingers get a little closer together. Or then maybe you go and your car battery died, so you're late to work, hypothetically. Your window's a little tight. And then those stressors and those things eat away at your ability to maintain regulated.
Yeah.
And I think there are seasons in my life where I do really well. And I'm like, oh, great. Okay, let that roll off my back. Like, don't carry that with us. And then there's other times where I go home and I step on a sock and I'm like, this is it. This is the hill I'm going to die on for no apparent reason other than at some point, without me paying too much attention, my window got so eaten up. The fact that I slipped on a dirty sock that my kid didn't put away somewhere it's it. This is, I'm going to go to the mat over this sock, apparently. And I just, it doesn't make any sense. There's usually a voice in the back of my head that goes, hey, crazy person, relax, walk away, go take a drink of water, do something because you're a crazy person. And if that little voice is with me in those moments, my wife is usually there to be there. Like, hey, crazy person, what are you doing? Like, why? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, why? Did you just take away the kids' holidays? Like, what happened? Yeah. So, anyway, all that to say, I think it's a very common thing.
Yeah.
We all don't want to do it. If you're listening to this podcast, watching it on YouTube, you're obviously don't want to do that.
Right.
But what are some techniques that parents can do to stay regulated?
Yeah. I think one of the things that it doesn't matter who you're talking to, right? Bruce Perry, Karen Purvis's team, right? The integrative treatment for attachment trauma, right? Like there's so many different types of interventions out there. And one of them will always be saying something about what kind of rhythms, rituals, routines do you have in place for yourself and with loved ones to create capacity, right? And so I think that's the first thing. I got to ask, what things do you do to create capacity for yourself for regulation?
I've gotten really good at sighing, I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Can we hear a sigh?
Yeah, so
let's hear it. Ooh, that's a good sigh.
I try to channel it from somewhere deep and then just let all of the angst and tension and just attach to the breath and then I just breathe it out.
Yeah.
I think other things, like movement, like I'm playing with this pen right now. Like I think I'm fairly fidgety as a person.
Yeah.
And so always having a something to
kind of
play
release,
with or to move some energy around or away from, maybe my body. Cause sometimes that's how it feels is like, it's trapped and I need to I need to get it out. Obviously like prayer, those quiet moments, I think, walking away, taking a breath. I think those are all, I don't breathe as much as I should apparently, but I think that helps.
It's so interesting, right? For anyone listening, right? The most stereotypical thing is let's take a deep breath. Yeah. And I feel, it seems like now if you're a parent and you've said that to your child, most of the time it's not helpful. They're more like, don't tell me to take a deep breath, right? Like they get upset about it because there's such a stereotypical experience with that. But there is so much rooted in our breathing, in actually attuned breathing, I should say, right? Where it's like I'm like just noticing the breath and how it fills your lungs. We call that a grounding technique, where instead of like responding to the environment, you notice your body just for a little bit. Other times, your light bulbs was in your head. What's that about?
There's a thing, and I don't know how true this is or not, but I saw a thing on the internet that was like, breathe like a Navy SEAL or some nonsense thing. But it talked about how they like inhale for a count of 4. They hold their breath for a count of 8, and then they like exhale for a count of 10, or like it's like this box breathing. And so you can do like 4, 4, and 4, or like, but the idea of I'm going to inhale, hold my breath, exhale, those kinds of things are all like, and that was another, again, maybe it's just because
no, that's actually a technique.
There's a 9-year-old still in me that wishes he turned into a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like that, like, so as you were talking like that, that kind of reminder, like, oh yeah, like that's exactly what it does. When I'm holding my breath, I'm aware of my body differently.
Yeah.
When I'm exhaling, I'm trying to make sure, okay, I can get to the 8 count or the 12 count or whatever that I'm doing, and like it really does pretty quickly, like, create a level of healthy tension to snap me out of my dysregulation.
Yeah. I think another thing that, at least again, for clients in our therapy practice, for myself in my home, having for us like nature, there's something about the beauty of nature, skies, mountains, clouds, open fields, forest, trees, like deep colors, right? All of those things, just even noticing those, taking them in while breathing. And so you'll see, like, even in our therapy offices, you have different kind of ocean and beach scenes. We have walls covered in like forest scene, right? Like these different things to kind of really kind of take your brain out of the situation just a moment and focus on something that is just so beautiful and really kind of takes this spatial part of your brain to kind of look at it and go, wow.
I think one of our interns taught me this, and one of our one of your counseling interns, and I apologize, I don't remember who it was, but they did this thing, and this is how imperfect my brain usually works, right. But it's like, what are 5 things you can see? What are 4 things you can touch? Or maybe it's, and so your kid, or even I will do this because I think it's a fun, it's like, okay, well, I feel my jeans, and then the smoothness of the paper, which is different than the table, which is different than this fuzzy thing on the microphone or whatever. And then you go, so you go see, you work through the senses. So see, touch, I think, and it's like hear, and then smell. And I don't taste.
Sometimes
I don't remember the taste.
A lot of times we use different kinds of things like mints or candies or something even just kind of popping in the mouth and kind of rolling it around the tongue. Okay. It's just so interesting, the power of mindfulness, right? Like, even for those of you out there, it's like you take your cell phone and just kind of notice the weight of it in your hand and feeling it, right? And just kind of being mindfully attuned to something takes your mind off of whatever you're like getting super dysregulated about in the moment, and you can kind of get into sense like that, and it's so powerful. Just changing your attunement just a little bit. So
it's cool. No, I have more thoughts than I thought I did about something like this, but I think there's a lot of different resources and things out there of mindfulness techniques or things like that we can implement and get weird, experiment, see what works. Because I've tried some things and I was like, well, that was dumb. And then other things are like, oh, I do like looking around my living room and seeing how many different things I can find or whatever.
So a perfect example of that, where it's like, for instance, with my kids, if I tell them to be mindfully aware of what they can see, no go.
Yeah.
But if I play I Spy with them, right, all of the sudden they start to become mindfully aware of it, right? Like it's so interesting how, for instance, mindfulness of body, right? There's a lot of kids that are just going to go, and maybe you have those at home where it's like, I'm not going to relax my body. I'm not going to pay attention to one part of my body. But if you get into, let's say, a basketball shooting competition or a Nerf gun shooting, right? Where let's close an eye, let's take a breath, let's shoot a Nerf dart gun on a target or whatever, but I got to steady my hand, right? Like it's the same thing, but you're doing it in the context of play. And so I find a lot of times that is so helpful for kids. Yeah, sneaky, right?
One of the things when I was a youth pastor for a while, we do these turnaround trips to Magic Mountain. And a lot of that is just go, like you wait in line for 2 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But what we would do is see how many people we could, I don't know, again, because we're just nothing else to do for 2 hours while we're waiting for a ride or whatever. But we would touch the wall and we would go, wow, it's kind of squishy. Just to see how many other people would touch it. And I don't think that's like, again, I don't want to lie to our kids, but that's almost like the idea of like, hey, what does this couch feel like? Or like, hey, does this feel weird to you?
Yep.
Too? Or like, what is this? Yeah.
And you think about that, right? Why? Because there's like this novelty of like, there's something different that I can kind of understand or integrate. That is a perfect example oftentimes with one of my kiddos that when they're struggling with being regulated, I'll either on myself or on him kind of like will rub something, let's say like a mole or a pimple or like a hair or something. And I'm like, oh, that feels kind of weird. What is going on there? Right. And and then I'll have him feel it. Right. And so I'm like, what do you think that is? And it's interesting how something like that can all of a sudden snap him out of a dysregulated, frustrating, and be attuned to something really quickly, which then we transition that right into nurture where it's like, oh, Dad, let me help you with this. Thanks. Wow. Or let me help you with this, son. And he's going, thanks. Right. But there's this caregiving. And so a lot of sneaky can be good sometimes with some of them.
And I think that, again, another call to why it's so important for parents to be regulated.
Yeah.
Why? Because we need to be able to adapt and think and do a little improv sometimes to help diffuse a situation.
And I know for me, one of the most dysregulating things as a dad is, right, if there's a season where my child's window of tolerance is really small because of trauma anniversaries, different things like that, it can kind of feel like, this is kind of going on forever. And that is usually a mindset of like, this is always happening and I just need a break. But to tell myself or remind myself, like, it's not going to be like this forever. They will get regulated. They will get back on track. We're going to help them improve. Right. And so I know for me, that is such an important thing to kind of set my hope on. It's going to get better. Yeah. And it will.
Yeah. That's awesome. So I would like to shift the conversation a little bit to, and you mentioned it, this idea of rituals or ceremonies that families can incorporate to help facilitate an environment. So more of like, almost like physical space that we're occupying together of regulation. And again, a book that I can't rave about enough, 7 Core Issues in Adoption and Permanency by Sharon Kaplan, Rosia, and Allison Davis Maxon. They give a quote, and I'll just read it.
Okay.
It says, children who are adopted or fostered or in a kinship family benefit from structured and predictable home environments where rituals for routine tasks are utilized to reinforce their sense of security and felt safety and continuity. So again, the goal, our kids feel safe. They know what's next. They have a sense of, I understand what's happening.
Yeah.
They continue in these, and they give some suggestions. I said these might include bath time, bedtime, playtime as rituals to help a child transition comfortably through their day. And so, what are some of the benefits or some of these things that might come from an environment of regulation and connection in our homes?
So I think about the power of rituals is, I don't know, have you ever been walking through a forest and you venture off the path, but then you're trying to find the path, right? Like, what do you typically look for when you're going, where's the path? Typically, the path, right? You're typically looking for an area that is well worn, right? Okay. That there's not like foliage, grass, kind of plants growing through that, right? Like, and it's usually much easier to kind of walk up and down that, right? If you just kind of think about that. Well, literally, that's what we're doing with any kind of ritual and routine is we are making a pathway in the brain, and we are almost cementing or paving or clearing a way so that there is a neural pathway in the brain for regulation connection that is happening. And so, for instance, with my kids, when it's bedtime, I'm engaging them in calming, quieting, regulating activities that sends them down this pathway of calm, quiet, regulated, peaceful connection, right? And so that can be like, I know with since they can really stand up, so like 8 months in their little cribs, right? Every one of my little ones, I would take their hands, right? And we would usually do some kind of fun, like winking or smiling, like we would copy. And because they're younger, I would often copy them. Yeah. And then we would kind of laugh, and then they would copy me. And then we would oftentimes put our heads together and we would pray. And prayers at that time usually is like a thank you for candy, thank you for like all the
Those
wonderful things.
Prayers yesterday.
That's your prayers yesterday, especially around the Halloween time, right? Like, but those rituals are paving in their brains this one, we're touching and we're connecting. 2, we're connecting with God. But then 3, we're thinking about things we're thankful for, right? Like, and all of a sudden you are paving a neural pathway in their brain that is going to help them get back to regulation with consistent routines like that. And so it's so helpful to use. And you think about like, well, that's not a practical solving of if my child has flipped their lid, but you want to get faster to regulation, you got to have those routines and different things like that. And so that's one example I think of where it's just so powerful. And oftentimes I would use that with my little ones as they got older. I'm going, Bud, give me your hands. Like, let me just hold your hands, right? And because it's face to face and I'm holding their hands, already starts to pave a neural pathway of when we would put our heads together, connect and pray in that way. And so it's interesting. They're not even aware of that happening, but because it's something I've paved, it naturally kind of gets them there faster. Yeah. So just one kind of idea about, but anything that your family does that is attachment rich, that is calming, that is kind of what we would think is like a positive resource development. So positive thoughts, positive emotions, regulated. So my heart's not racing, right? I'm just, might even kind of demonstrate some kind of calm breathing and stuff like that. So powerful in those routines to literally get kids calmer faster.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think, some of the things that we have is, as a family is like we've got a little mantras that each of our kids say on our way to school, right? So
that's a great
make the right turn, and almost like it is at this point almost Pavlov was the dog, right? Like that. Yeah. They make the turn, and it just sometimes shoots out of their mouth unexpectedly almost at times, right? Yeah. Like, just nope, that's what we do. And it like could be a day to school. It could just be, hey, we're going to go to the volleyball game at the school, and we make that turn, and it comes out. And I think it's those types of things. And the hope there is, or with them, is they're going to remind them of who they are, that they're loved, that they're safe, that they're strong, they're capable to take whatever challenges the day might bring.
Right.
Kind of right before they jump out of the minivan to face whatever challenges the day might bring.
Right. Yeah. And all of that, right? Like their strength, their value, again, kind of gets to this kind of belief or mindset, like it's going to be okay. Got a little lighting issue going on back here, but exciting. It's light bulb time, right? But really it's going to be okay. Yeah. Like I'm going to be okay because I'm capable, I'm confident, right? Whatever that might look like. And so, great. That's
awesome. I think some of the other things too, like even just physical things in our house, right? Like one of our boys has a giant beanbag in his house, or in his room, in our house.
Yeah.
And he uses that thing to like jump on. He uses that thing to like cuddle in. He uses it like I think every house should have a giant beanbag.
Yeah.
But another one of our sons has it's like a swing type deal. It's almost like a hammock, but it's kind of stretchy, so he can really like get in it.
Oh,
and curl up in there, and so I even think some things like that are really important to have. When we talk about like physical space, and so after school, we don't jump right into homework because why pick that fight,
right?
But they run in and they grab a snack, or they carry their snack in with them from the car, and they just kind of sit and relax for 20 minutes, and they just kind of do these things where whatever today held, you don't have to deal with it for those 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we'll start homework, and then we'll connect, and then we'll, it's even like we try not to even ask too many questions about their day, it just, just go breathe a little bit. Go relax. Just
de-stress.
Just
let it go.
You're going to be with us the rest of the night. So
right.
Soon
we'll get there.
I'll run out of questions to ask you. So why not?
Right. Yeah.
You don't need me interrogating you about what good choices did you make and how, what kind of a respectful kid were you? And those kinds of things.
We'll get there. And I think another point, just to kind of, even the things that you're talking about, right? Like the swings and the bean bags, that all oftentimes is meeting a physiological need, right? Like, so oftentimes kids who are like sensory seekers will need that exercise, the push pull you're talking about, like the fidgeting and those kinds of things, right? Like, but oftentimes in school, kids are not getting enough of that. And so I know for our kids, like it's the trampoline or the pool, right? Like it's like those things for them, they need that, what we call proprioceptive.
That's the word I was going to use.
That's the word you were going to use. Yeah. Right. Like that proprioceptive or vestibular. So proprioceptive is like that deep muscular input. And then vestibular is like the spinning, where you're at in relationship to the world, right? Those things, we all have like a certain level or appetite for that. And we see a lot of times our children might be sensory seekers with that. And so to have routines where you're naturally, intentionally meeting that in ways where they're not getting in trouble, super helpful. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah. You're brilliant, man.
Go climb on those things.
Yeah.
Because I won't yell at you if you do.
Yeah. Right? Like, and that's the thing is like, they're going to meet their needs.
Yeah.
They can either do it on a socially appropriate way on a trampoline, or they can get in trouble doing it on the expensive furniture or whatever, right? Like, yeah.
Exactly. Well, cool. So continuing, I wanted to pull one more quote to you and kind of get your response of some things.
Yeah.
Again, talking about rituals and ceremonies, they say this from 7 Core Issues in Adoption and Permanency. Rituals and ceremonies are particularly relevant to kids who are in transition from one place to another, like foster care, and for creating and strengthening new family attachments, like adoption.
Yeah.
Children who have no language for what's happening in their lives may experience a ritual that can help them conceptualize and give meaning to the events that impacted them. They continue by saying, rituals draw attention and provide an avenue to facilitate the calming presence of a child into the family system. And I love this word, clan.
Clan, yeah.
I love that idea of, a lot of these kids, whether if in foster care, sometimes you're part of a family temporarily, because that's the intention, right?
Yeah.
Like reunification is the goal. And sometimes in adoption or permanency, guardianship or a kinship relationship or something like that, is like, this is your family. These are the people you belong to and who belong to you. And so what are some rituals or things families have done to give kiddos a voice in their story, or to give them an avenue of, we belong here. So so we, in our family, we have each kiddo, and it's around like a cute little sign thing, but is each kiddo that was in our home when we fostered. And so we have, and something, again, it's something about love and how even if it's temporarily with us, the love will continue wherever you go and things like that. But that is one of the things that, you know, like we kind of find ourselves like stopping and looking and going like, oh yeah, I remember her, or I remember him, and I remember, you know, like, oh, that was fun, or, you know, like those kinds of things, or like, you know, a lot of times it's maybe a little bittersweet too sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, oh, remember when that happened? Oh, do you remember how that kind of ended? Or, you know, like but it is that sense of the love and the feelings that we have for those kiddos, whatever the outcome, still remains. And still are able, so our boys can run up to it and they see their pictures for when we were fostering them.
Yeah.
Like, hey, that's me. You know, or like, where's my hair?
Yeah,
I don't know, man. That's just you're a bald baby. I don't know what to tell you. So, but yeah, are there other examples or things like that families have utilized to help kids give voice or develop that identity?
Yeah, I think one of the things that oftentimes, like around a dinner table, is even having kind of consistent spots or seats around a dinner table. So it's like when we come together, this is your spot. This is where you will always come and be a part of this. I think even along with that, not all the time do we do this, but some of the time, right? Like even the idea of like serving one another at the table. So like, hey, I'm going to get my brother to the left next to me. Like, I'm going to get their food. So I'm asking like, what would you like? Would you like it this? Right. And so then we're also kind of create this like, ooh, yeah, that's like the perfect amount. Thank you very much. Or can I have a little bit more? Right. And so what we're doing is it's like you have a spot and that spot is serving one. And we go kind of different directions. But the idea that it's like, hey, littlest sibling, you have the capacity to influence and make an older sibling or even a parent feel good, right? Which naturally is this value and worth to that, regardless of how long that you've been in our home or been a part of it, right? And so even doing that when we have guests or family members over, and it's like, oh wow, this is, and you know, they kind of first watch some of our kids do that. And so I would say that's one of the things along the lines of the photos. We tend to not have as much stuff on our walls because of how crazy and wild we have, but like we will screen share Google Photos. And so we kind of, we label the faces, right? Like, and so now Google knows every person that's been in my house probably and knows their name, but
that's not scary for a whole
right. Anyway, that's a whole other reason. Yeah, it's the next Halloween scary podcast,
different podcast that we don't need to talk about.
We don't need to talk about that. But there is something where it's like so easy to kind of go, oh, let's look at so and so, and it's so funny because this is like a routine that we do a couple times a month usually. The kids kind of have their favorites. So it's like, oh, let's go look at so-and-so. Remember that one time they were falling asleep in their plate, right? And they got their face all messy, right? Like, and so now we're all kind of laughing, but delighting in, which is kind of cool when you have like a little sibling looking at the older siblings' baby pictures and delighting in them, right? Because oftentimes it's always kind of one way. And so I would say that's another great is like, hey, let's go look at photos or videos. And I mean, the way that cloud storage is now, it's like, man, it's like endless with that stuff, right? So easy. And yet it's something that we are laughing and delighting in. And so I would say that's another thing that I've found has been super helpful to just reflect on people. Same thing with we have a pretty close relationship with some of the biological family of our adopted children. And so that's another way when we are not able to have contact with them, but we really miss them. We go back and watch some of the funny things that we've done. And so, some of the things that
we've done. Some of our kiddos have like individual, like, you know, those little photo books that you can get. And so we're always looking for, you know, those flash sales or whatever. Like, okay, hey, we can make our kids a couple books. And it's just old photos of family members or events or things that, and then that way, like how many times, like, do I just see a kid pick one up and start thumbing through it, or letting them decorate their room in the way that they want with such the photos that they have? That there's these like physical reminders of these are all part of your story. Yeah. Or I've heard people doing like vision boards or things like that of even projecting a bright and valuable future for themselves. So I think could be really, really impactful and really, really powerful. Because it's that the goal for these things, obviously, again, connection, reminding them of where they've come from, continually being able to normalize their story in the past, but then also like we're moving forward together. Yeah. And so I think it's cool. It's fun how there are times where things will happen and it's not a big deal. Like, I think when we're sitting around the table, right? Like asking like roses and thorns, highs and lows. I try to think of, like blessings and bummers or whatever, like just
all kinds of names for the same thing. I love that.
Yeah. Just to give them, it's the same thing. It's that desire of, I want to hear about your day. I want to connect with you. I want to know you're doing good. Like what was great. And sometimes it was like, it was only bummers today or whatever. Right. And then the other times like, yeah, it was fine, and you're like, okay, great. Like, I don't, it's almost like, yes, I would love a response. Yeah. However, especially our older ones, I understand. Yeah. You're now to an age where you are going to initiate the connection that you want to have with me. Yeah. I just want to make sure that gate and that road is as wide as possible. Yeah. If that means we end up having a conversation at 10:30 at night when you're supposed to be going to bed, great. I'm going to eat that up. Yeah.
How many times does that happen though, right? With like adolescent, pre-adolescent, you're just like, man. Yeah. But okay, I'll take it. You started
making this quesadilla for yourself 45 minutes ago. And I'm not going to tell you to go to bed anytime soon because, So I think it's those
so powerful.
Those kinds of things of even, like you said, just making a ritual to be available. Even if it's just, Johnny went to go make a quesadilla in the kitchen/living room or however. That's kind of how our house is connected. But I want to be there. I want to like just, hey, quesadilla, huh? Great. All right. Sometimes, it sounds real dumb and dumber. Oh, big gulps, huh?
Right. Yeah.
But other times that's the crack that they need to feel comfortable. And so even just kind of these rituals that we have.
Such a beautiful space that I think can feel you can pass by it and not even realize how beautiful it was with some of that connection, but it just really is. I think about another one that my kiddos are used to doing is they call it iron sharpens iron. It's like from the verse, right? Iron sharpens iron, like one man sharpens another. But it's just really kind of thinking about whether it's that day or if we've had a rough day, maybe it's in the last week. What is something that you just really love and appreciate about your sibling or a specific family member? But we really, and we take time kind of doing it. And oftentimes what it is we'll pick a family member and the whole family will say something about them, and then we'll go to the next one, right? And so the whole family will say the next one. But the idea, right, is this: you are so valued and you are so important to our family, and you bring something completely unique. Again, and we delight in that, right? I think about that image of like a parent holding a baby and they're like, oh, you're so beautiful, right? It's that same thing, but in like an age appropriate way. And to even give children the power to do that to other children by delighting. Super powerful with like attachment perspective stuff with that, which is really regulating. As they get used to it. Now, it might not be regulating right at first, right? But even as you're doing it in a rhythm or routine, it again paves that neural pathway.
I mean, this has been good for me. I hope it's been a blessing for people watching or listening to it as well. Some quick next steps if you want to go further in this idea of it's kind of self-regulation. How do we create an environment of attachment, rituals, things like that? You can check out familycarelearning.org. And I think we just learned .com also gets you there. So whichever one you want. But ArizonaFamilyCounseling.com.
Yep.
For sure. I know that one. And in particular, check out classes that are like parenting with empowerment. Is that, do I have that correctly?
Yeah. That one really looks at kind of like all of the needs for a child to really help them stay regulated and from environmental to internal.
Great.
And so, I think it's a super helpful
awesome.
class. So,
And reach out to us. Again, CFC, we're here to strengthen families and serve at-risk kids in the name of Jesus. That's why we're here. That's why the lights are on.
Yeah.
So we want to support you for that. Brandon, thanks again for joining me in the family care spooky time. Hopefully it wasn't too spooky.